Every relationship carries lessons. Some are gentle, others arrive like a storm, loud, unrelenting, unforgettable. Today we'll explore a storm of a different kind, the quiet battle after you choose no contact. This is where your strength is tested and where their secret wishes begin to surface. When you choose silence after a difficult relationship, something powerful begins to happen. At first it can feel almost unnatural. We're conditioned to respond, to explain, to defend ourselves. But true silence, complete no contact, changes the entire balance of power. It is not about punishment or revenge. It is about reclaiming ownership of your own life and energy. In that quiet space, you shift the focus away from the person who once dominated your thoughts and redirect it back to where it belongs, yourself. Imagine a conversation where one voice suddenly disappears. The other person may raise their tone, repeat themselves, even resort to dramatic gestures, all in an effort to be heard. Your silence creates a similar effect. It disrupts a pattern that once gave someone a sense of control. They may not show it, but the absence of your reaction forces them to confront a reality they can't bend to their will. What once fueled their confidence, your attention, is no longer available. This isn't merely the absence of words. It's a declaration that your emotional well-being no longer depends on anyone else's approval or disapproval. Silence is a boundary drawn in invisible ink, yet it speaks louder than arguments or explanations ever could. It says, "I will not be pulled into a cycle that drains me." And because there is nothing for them to push against, nothing to provoke or manipulate, their usual tactics lose their strength. In that space, you begin to feel a subtle shift. Your mind quiets. You start to hear your own thoughts more clearly. You notice the small joys around you, the sound of your own breath, the way morning light moves across a room. These simple moments of awareness are not trivial. They are signs that you're taking back the present moment, which is something no one else can own. Silence also reveals truth. When you no longer respond to provocations, you see patterns you might have overlooked before. You recognize the ways you were drawn into endless debates or emotional traps. Now, without the constant back and forth, the picture sharpens. You understand that the need for control was never about love or care. It was about feeding a fragile ego. By stepping away, you stop providing the fuel that kept that cycle alive. It takes courage to stay quiet when everything in you wants to explain or defend. At first, you may doubt yourself. You may wonder if silence is too passive. But in reality, it is an active choice, one of the strongest moves you can make. Each day you remain silent, you reaffirm that you value your peace more than you fear their reaction. And something remarkable happens within you. The energy that once went into conflict now flows toward growth. You rediscover your own voice, but this time it speaks inwardly, a calm, steady reminder that your worth isn't measured by someone else's acknowledgement. Power in silence isn't about winning or proving a point. It is about living in a way that is no longer dictated by another person's need for control. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you are free, and that freedom speaks volumes without a single word. The hidden desire for attention is one of the most powerful forces at play when someone is met with true silence. Attention, for many people, isn't just pleasant, it's proof of existence. When a person who thrives on external recognition suddenly encounters a wall of quiet, it feels like stepping into a void. The absence of feedback, whether praise, argument, or even a simple acknowledgement, becomes almost unbearable. When you choose to cut off communication, you remove the very fuel that keeps that dynamic alive. No texts to answer, no looks to interpret, no energy to feed on. The person on the other side senses this immediately. What they secretly long for is not necessarily your affection or approval. They crave evidence that they still matter in your mind. Even a negative response would reassure them. Anger, frustration, or a short reply would confirm that you are still tuned in to their frequency. Silence, however, is different from indifference. Silence is an intentional act. It announces without a single word that you have shifted your focus inward, away from their influence. And that quiet declaration can feel louder than any argument. In that space, the person who once commanded your attention begins to wonder. They may replay old conversations, searching for cracks in your resolve. They may attempt small provocations, perhaps through mutual acquaintances or subtle signals, to see if you'll break the quiet. Each move is a test, a way to draw you back into a familiar dance. What they really want is to know they still occupy your mental landscape. They may imagine scenarios where you question your choice, where you miss them, where you silently suffer in their absence. That imagined power provides a temporary comfort. Without contact, they cannot see whether any of these fantasies are true, and that uncertainty becomes a source of tension for them. Your lack of reaction forces them to confront a reality they would rather ignore. They are not the center of your universe. This hidden need for attention isn't always loud or dramatic. It can show up in small, almost invisible ways. A sudden social media post designed to spark curiosity, a casual mention of your name in a shared circle, a message disguised as concern, perhaps about something trivial but timed to pull you back into dialogue. Each gesture carries the same message. Look at me, remember me, prove I still matter. But the real lesson lies not in their longing, but in your choice to remain silent. By refusing to supply the attention they seek, you redefine the terms of the relationship. You teach, without preaching, that your energy is not theirs to claim. This isn't about punishment, it's about liberation, about reclaiming the space in your own mind and heart. In time, the pull for attention weakens when it goes unrewarded. The absence of your reaction creates a new equilibrium where you hold the quiet power. You are no longer a participant in a cycle of provocation and response. Instead, you are the author of your own peace. That ultimately is what transforms the hidden desire for attention into a lesson in strength, the realization that your silence is not emptiness, but a powerful statement of self-respect and freedom. Validation is one of the most potent forces that drives human behavior, but in certain personalities it takes on a shape that is almost insatiable. When someone thrives on constant reassurance, they develop a deep dependency on the approval and admiration of others. This hunger for validation is not a simple desire to be liked or appreciated. It is the very foundation of how they measure their worth. Without it, they feel as though their identity begins to crumble. Imagine living in a world where every glance, every word, every gesture from others is a reflection of your value. That is the world they inhabit, and it explains why silence from someone who once provided that affirmation feels like a vacuum they cannot tolerate. During a relationship, they often create an environment where your praise and attention become routine. They learn which compliments light them up, which actions make them feel powerful, and which responses feed their sense of importance. Over time, it can seem as if your role is to be a mirror reflecting back their best image. When you choose no contact, that mirror is suddenly gone. The compliments, the small signs of admiration, the emotional reactions, all disappear. It's not merely inconvenient to them. It's a direct challenge to the story they've told themselves about who they are. Your silence forces them to confront a question they prefer never to ask. If no one is watching, do I still matter? This need for validation often shows itself in subtle, even calculated ways. They may reach out with a casual message that seems harmless on the surface, but is designed to draw you back into the role of reassurer. A simple "hope you're well" or a photo shared on social media might look like nothing more than friendly contact. In truth, each small attempt carries a deeper motive. They are testing whether you will offer the acknowledgement they crave. Even negative attention, anger, frustration, or a defensive response can serve their purpose, because it tells them they still occupy space in your thoughts. The craving for validation is also tied to their sense of control. When you admired them or reacted to their moods, they felt a certain influence over your emotions. It affirmed their belief that they mattered more than anyone else in the room. With no contact, that influence fades. They are left to wonder if their significance was ever real, or if it was only sustained by your participation. This is not just uncomfortable, it is deeply threatening to their self-impunity. Your quiet, consistent absence acts as a silent but powerful reminder that their worth cannot be dictated by another person's attention. It issues them a democratic choice, based upon their own timeless, if not ultimately, preferred. For you, understanding this dynamic is liberating. It reveals why staying silent is so effective, even when it feels difficult. Every day that you resist the pull to respond, you reinforce the truth that your value is not defined by their need for affirmation. You show through action rather than argument that you will not be a source of endless approval. Over time, this becomes more than a boundary. It becomes a declaration of independence. The energy you once spent validating someone else can be redirected toward your own growth, your own sense of purpose. In that shift, you reclaim not only your time, but your power, proving to yourself that you no longer need to play a role in someone else's endless search for validation. Emotional hooking is one of the most subtle yet powerful tactics used to pull someone back into a cycle of confusion and dependence. It rarely appears loud or dramatic. Instead, it hides in small gestures, familiar phrases, and carefully timed interactions. The goal is to stir your emotions just enough to break your resolve, to create a spark of curiosity or guilt that opens the door for renewed contact. When you choose silence and step away, this hidden strategy often begins to reveal itself. Imagine the way a fisherman casts a line. There's patience, precision, and an understanding of what might catch attention beneath the surface. In the same way, someone who once held influence over your emotions knows which memories and triggers might still live inside you. They may send a message that feels strangely casual, perhaps a short text that seems like a simple check-in or an innocent question about something from the past. They know that even a few words can awaken old feelings or unresolved thoughts. It isn't about genuine connection, it's about testing if the bond still exists. Sometimes the hook is not even a direct message. It can appear as a sudden presence on social media, a like on an old photo, a vague post that seems to reference a shared moment, or an indirect comment that you can't help but notice. These small acts are designed to spark wonder. You might catch yourself thinking, was that meant for me? Do they still care? That tiny question is the opening they hope for. The power of this tactic lies not in what is said, but in what it makes you feel. There are deeper layers, too. Emotional hooking often plays with nostalgia. They may bring up a memory of a happy time, a joke only the two of you would understand, or a reminder of a dream you once shared. These touches of the past are powerful because they bypass logic and reach straight into the heart. Memories can soften even the strongest boundaries if you let them. Recognizing this is essential because it helps you separate the comfort of a memory from the reality of why you stepped away. Guilt is another thread in this strategy. A carefully chosen phrase might suggest that you've been unfair or that your silence has caused unnecessary pain. Even if the words are mild, the intention is to shift the weight back onto your shoulders, making you question whether your decision to stay distant is somehow cruel. In truth, protecting your peace is never cruel, but emotional hooks thrive on self-doubt, and guilt is a powerful way to create it. Perhaps the most challenging aspect of emotional hooking is its unpredictability. Days or weeks may pass without a sign, lulling you into a sense of calm. Then, just as you've settled fully into your own rhythm, a sudden gesture appears. This unpredictability keeps you alert, waiting for the next ripple. It can feel like a game of chess where every move is meant to keep you from fully walking away. Understanding this pattern is your greatest defense. Each attempt to stir your emotions is a reminder of why silence is so important. When you see the hooks for what they are, carefully placed lures meant to draw you back, you reclaim your power. The moment you choose not to react, you break the pattern. You prove that your emotions belong to you alone, and with every quiet refusal, you strengthen the freedom you worked so hard to create. Control is one of the deepest drives in any unhealthy dynamic, and when you step away, it reveals itself more clearly than ever. When someone has grown accustomed to steering conversations, moods, and even your sense of self, the sudden absence of that influence is jarring. Independence, in this context, is not just you making your own choices. It is a signal that the old pattern no longer holds power. For the person who once thrived on directing your reactions, that realization can feel like a personal defeat. They may never say it out loud, but your autonomy unsettles them because it proves their grip was never as permanent as they believed. Consider how subtle the dance of control can be. It is rarely about loud commands. More often it shows up in small manipulations, questions designed to sow doubt, comments meant to guide your emotions, even moments of calculated silence intended to draw you back. When you maintain no contact, you remove the stage on which those tactics once played. Without a willing audience, those strategies lose their effectiveness. This isn't just a change in routine, it is a restructuring of power. The reins they once held simply fall away, and with them goes the illusion that your decisions can be bent to their will. Your independence does more than protect you, it forces them to face themselves. Control thrives in environments where attention and energy flow outward toward the controlling party. When that flow stops, they are left with their own thoughts and insecurities. They might attempt to re-establish old connections through indirect means. Perhaps a message sent through mutual acquaintances, a sudden appearance in places you frequent, or a social media post clearly meant for your eyes. Each move is a quiet question. Will you still respond? Will you allow them back into the space they once occupied? The strength required to hold firm is significant because it is not merely about avoiding contact. It is about resisting the internal tug of past habits. You may feel the urge to explain yourself or to check whether they have truly changed, but every time you choose stillness over reaction, you reaffirm your own authority. This is the essence of reclaimed control. You are no longer moved by someone else's need to dominate the narrative. Independence also shifts the balance of respect. By standing on your own, you demonstrate to them and to yourself that your value is not dependent on another person's recognition. This can be transformative. It reminds you that your time, attention, and emotional energy are resources you manage, not gifts to be taken for granted. The freedom to decide where those resources go is both a shield and a statement. You are the one guiding your life. In this light, control is not simply taken back, it is redefined. It becomes the quiet confidence to live on your own terms, to let silence speak where words once defended, and to allow distance to heal what manipulation once distorted. The more you embrace that independence, the clearer it becomes that true strength was never about holding someone else's reins. It was always about holding your own. The fear of irrelevance is a quiet but powerful force that drives many of the behaviors you see after no contact. When you step away and refuse to engage, you remove the very stage they once performed on. Your silence becomes a mirror, and in that reflection they are faced with an uncomfortable truth. They are no longer the center of someone's world. For someone who has built an identity around influence and control, this realization feels like a slow erosion of existence. It is not just about missing a person. It is about confronting a void where admiration, attention, and emotional energy used to flow freely. Consider how they once thrived. Every call you answered, every emotion you displayed, every argument you entertained, these were all signals that they mattered. Their sense of importance was nourished by each interaction, no matter how small or negative. When those interactions cease, the steady supply of validation dries up. What remains is silence. And silence is deafening to someone who measures their worth by the reactions of others. Without your attention, they feel like a performer left on an empty stage, the spotlight gone dark, the audience gone home. It is a reality they will resist with everything they have. This fear does not always appear dramatic on the surface. It can take subtle forms, occasional attempts to check in, messages sent under the guise of concern, or sudden appearances in places you frequent. These gestures are not genuine acts of connection. They are attempts to confirm they still occupy space in your mind. Each small outreach is like a knock on a locked door, testing to see if it will open. Your continued silence tells them it will not. Each unanswered attempt reinforces a message they cannot bear to hear. Life is moving forward without them. What makes this fear so profound is that it strikes at the core of identity. To be irrelevant is to lose a sense of self. For someone who relies on external validation, irrelevance feels like fading into invisibility. The absence of your response forces them to face a question they avoid. Who are they without the attention and control they once commanded? It is a question that does not have an easy answer, and so they scramble for anything that might restore the illusion of significance. For you, understanding this dynamic is not about gloating or seeking revenge. It is about recognizing the strength in your silence. The fear they experience is theirs to manage, not yours to soothe. Every day you maintain no contact, you reinforce the truth that your life is not defined by their presence. You are demonstrating quietly and powerfully that your worth is independent of anyone's validation. In doing so, you teach a lesson that words could never convey. Relevance is earned through respect and mutual care, not demanded through manipulation or noise. This process is not only a challenge for them, it is a victory for you. The fear of irrelevance on their side mirrors the growth of independence on yours. Where they feel the sting of being forgotten, you feel the freedom of rediscovering yourself. That contrast is where your strength lies. You do not need to announce it or explain it. The absence of engagement is enough. Over time, the silence that unsettles them becomes the sound of your own life, full and vibrant, moving forward without interruption. When you decide to maintain no contact, one of the most subtle challenges you'll face is the quiet testing of your boundaries. It rarely arrives in a dramatic way. Instead, it slips in like a soft breeze, easy to overlook if you're not alert. Someone who once fed on your attention often cannot stand the finality of silence. They may not storm in with apologies or grand gestures, because that would admit vulnerability. Instead, they explore the edges of your resolve with small, almost invisible attempts. A sudden message that seems casual, "Hey, just checking in, hope you're well." A forgotten belonging that now, months later, needs to be returned. A song posted on social media that you both loved, timed perfectly when they know you'll see it. None of these moves are random. Each one is a small probe, a way to find out if the door to your life is still unlocked. These tests are not always direct. Sometimes they arrive through mutual friends, people who might mention their name in conversation or casually deliver a message disguised as concern. They were asking how you've been. They seem different now. Other times it can be something even more subtle, like appearing in places you frequent or liking an old photo on your social media. Each action is a quiet knock on the wall that separates your new life from the old dynamic. They're looking for cracks, places where curiosity might outweigh your commitment to peace. Recognizing these tests is essential, because the power of no contact rests on clarity. It is not a punishment, it is a boundary. Boundaries are not walls to keep the world out, they are lines that define where you end and someone else begins. When someone tries to blur those lines, the temptation might be to explain, to respond politely, to prove that you are not cold or unkind. But explanation is a door. A simple reply, even one word, tells them you are still listening. It shows that the silence can be interrupted. And once that door opens, even a crack, it invites more attempts. Holding the boundary requires inner steadiness. It's not only about ignoring a text or avoiding a conversation, it's about staying rooted in the reason you chose distance in the first place. Each test is an opportunity to reaffirm your decision. Instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of engaging, you breathe. In that moment, you protect not only your time, but also your mental and emotional well-being. You remind yourself that your energy is too valuable to be spent revisiting old patterns. It is important to remember that these tests are often not conscious strategies. They can be habits formed from a lifetime of seeking control or attention. Understanding this allows you to remain calm rather than angry. You are not at war, you are simply choosing freedom. By refusing to respond, you teach not only them but yourself that your peace is not negotiable. Over time, the attempts diminish, not because they suddenly understand, but because they learn there is no reward. Silence, when chosen with intention, becomes a language of strength. Every time you stay true to this boundary, you send a quiet message: you have moved on, and your life is no longer a stage for someone else's drama. This is not coldness, it is clarity. It is the steady recognition that your well-being is your responsibility, and that no one has the right to test the gates of your peace. The greatest victory in walking away is not simply the act of leaving. It is the transformation that unfolds in the quiet that follows. When you choose no contact and hold your ground, you are not merely closing a door on someone else, you are opening countless doors within yourself. This inner victory cannot be measured by anyone else's approval, because it belongs entirely to you. It is the process of rediscovering your own strength, of realizing that your worth never depended on someone else's recognition. In the early days, the silence can feel heavy, almost too loud, and doubt may try to creep in. But with every sunrise you face alone, you begin to notice a subtle shift. You hear your own thoughts more clearly. You begin to trust your own decisions again. You realize that peace is not an absence of sound, but the presence of self-respect. As time passes, this choice becomes more than just a boundary. It becomes a declaration of independence. You are no longer reacting to someone else's moods or manipulation. You are no longer bending yourself into shapes to fit expectations that were never yours to begin with. Instead, you begin to build a life on your own terms. That might mean new routines, healthier relationships, or simply the freedom to breathe without fear of judgment. You start to see that your energy is precious and finite, and you learn to invest it in things that nourish you: creativity, growth, genuine connection. Each small act of self-care, reading a book, taking a walk, learning a new skill, becomes a brick in the foundation of the life you are choosing. This inner victory also changes how you see the past. Experiences that once felt confusing begin to make sense. You can look back without the fog of constant conflict. Instead of replaying old arguments or trying to rewrite history, you begin to accept it for what it was, a chapter that taught you the value of self-worth. That acceptance is not weakness, it is strength. It means you no longer need closure from anyone else, because you have given it to yourself. What's most remarkable is how this transformation radiates outward. People notice the steadiness in your voice, the calm in your eyes. You attract relationships built on mutual respect because you now understand what you deserve. Challenges still come, as they do for everyone, but you face them with a resilience that wasn't there before. You have proven to yourself that you can stand alone, and that knowledge is a quiet, unshakable power. This is the essence of inner victory, the freedom to live without chains you once thought were unbreakable. It is the ability to love yourself without needing constant reassurance. It is the deep understanding that happiness is not something someone else can grant or take away. It lives within you, waiting to be claimed. By holding your boundary and choosing yourself, you have already claimed it. That is not just survival, it is triumph.